First, let's start with this case. I've been married for 15 years, and my mother-in-law invited me to lunch and to finish Christmas shopping with her. She wasn't sure what to get my 9-year-old son, so we met at a video game store. They were out of the game I had suggested, so I mentioned another game that I had already purchased for my son but was willing to return to make it easier for her to buy it instead. At the next store, I was shopping for my kids, adding small gifts to my cart. My mother-in-law kept asking who the items were for, and then proceeded to take them out of my cart and put them into hers. I jokingly said, "If you keep taking stuff, Santa's going to suck this year." She didn't seem to care and continued. When we were checking out, I told her I planned to go to Best Buy next door to get my daughter her big gift from my husband and me, a camcorder, something she had been asking for all year. My mother-in-law, who collects an assortment of random merchandise from casino giveaways, casually mentioned she might have one at home. I made it very clear that I was excited to buy this specific gift for my daughter, saying, "Thanks, but no thanks. This is something I want to get her." She came along to Best Buy and stood with me at checkout as I purchased the camcorder. I even talked about how excited I was to see my daughter's reaction on Christmas morning, since it was the #1 item on her wish list. Fast forward 2 days. My daughter stayed overnight at her grandma's house, and when she came home, she was ecstatic to share some news. "Mom, brother has 7 presents under the tree. I have 6, and Nana got me a vlogging camera. But we need your help with the memory card." I was stunned. Who does that? I texted my mother-in-law, asking why on earth she thought it was okay to give my daughter the same gift I had already purchased and planned to give her. Her response, "It's just a kid's toy." As if that made it any better. To make matters worse, my husband doesn't seem to understand why I'm upset. He thinks I'm overreacting, but I feel completely undermined. This was supposed to be a special gift from us to our daughter, and she robbed me of that moment. So, am I the jerk here for being upset? Additional context. I had never shopped with my mother-in-law before, and the items she took from my cart weren't essential, just little bonus Santa gifts. It never crossed my mind that she would buy the camcorder herself and give it to my daughter before Christmas. Honestly, I couldn't have imagined anyone doing something like that, so it wasn't even on my radar. For those judging me beyond this specific incident, let's stay focused. You're reading a short account of one situation, hardly enough to judge my entire life. If you feel qualified to do so, please share your credentials. Otherwise, kindly refrain. Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. But is your MIL always like this? Why would you keep taking her to stores? Tell her nothing, she is on an ice diet. You unfortunately let her by taking her with you if she is always like this, and the kids going a few days before Xmas. Well, yeah, she was one-upping you. Did you not anticipate that? You have a husband problem. Do you normally get steamrolled by the two? You're not in the wrong, but your husband and Mael are. I'd be so disgusted if my husband didn't back me up when his mother was so obviously wrong. That's foul. I'd call him out on it. Let him know this is a major problem. You're not in the wrong. This is ridiculous. When I was young, my grandparents helped my parents buy a big gift that I really wanted and just was not in budget. It said it was from Santa. I knew what was up. We didn't open Santa gifts at my grandparents' house. But that was the story. Not until after both of my grandparents passed away that they told me, even though I actually knew anyways. My grandfather pulling that big box from behind his chair was one of my favorite memories, and it's only more special. Next up, a few years ago, I met my partner's cousin for the first time when he came to visit our city. We live on opposite coasts. It didn't take long for me to realize he's the type of person I would never normally spend time with, but I stayed cordial. My partner later admitted, "Yeah, Fred's a lot of fun, but he can be a bit much." About a year ago, we moved to my partner's hometown and started spending more time with his family, on his mother's side, and his childhood friends. Coincidentally, Fred also moved to the area for work. The family, who didn't know him well, welcomed him warmly at first, inviting him to everything. Over time, though, I noticed his presence at casual family gatherings became less frequent. My partner would ask, "Hey, where's Fred?" And the responses were usually groans or awkward looks. It became clear that I'm not the only one who finds being around him difficult. Fred still gets invited to big events like Thanksgiving or weddings, but smaller gatherings, like game nights or brunches, often exclude him. It's worth noting that my partner's family is very close-knit and spends a lot of time together. Recently, Fred messaged me, asking if I knew why the family hasn't been including him in things. I think he sees me as another outsider in the family, so he feels comfortable asking. Now I'm torn about how to respond. The honest truth is that most people in the family don't enjoy being around Fred because of his personality and behavior. He's loud, abrasive, pushy, and often inconsiderate. If anyone calls him out, he brushes it off, claiming he's just fierce and people need to adjust. He changes the energy of every gathering he's invited to, and not in a good way. When my partner described him as fun, it was because Fred is often the loudest person at a bar or club, pushing people to take shots, do karaoke, or try things they're not comfortable with. But when he's with this family, which is mostly introverted, his behavior feels overwhelming. He doesn't respect boundaries or preferences, and we don't need to come out of our shells. We know what we like, and we're all in our 40s, past the stage of needing someone to guide our social lives. For example, we once went to a museum with Grandma and the kids. There was a sculpture with a rope and a sign asking people to keep their distance. Fred wanted a group selfie and insisted we duck under the rope to take it. When most of us declined, he called us names, laughed it off, and claimed it was just his edgy, charming personality. Another time, while out at a restaurant, he sent back his drink order twice, loudly telling the server, "Sweetheart, this isn't how I like my old-fashioned." On top of that, he's often at least 45 minutes late to everything. I don't know how to respond to Fred's question without either telling him the harsh truth, his behavior and personality don't mesh well with the family, or just feigning ignorance and saying, "I'm not sure." On one hand, I feel like he deserves honesty if he's asking, but on the other, I don't know if it's my place to deliver such difficult feedback. So, would I be the jerk if I told him the truth? Or should I just avoid the conflict and say I don't know why he's being left out? I'd appreciate some advice. Let's start judging. I can't say for sure, but in my observations of you, the things you describe as your fierce personality can come off as abrasive. I know you say that people need to learn how to deal with it, but many people want to spend time with people who are easy to get along with, not people they have to deal with. And when people give you feedback on your behaviors, you tend to laugh and either insult them or ignore them. You're not in the wrong, and it would be a kindness if you would give him this feedback gently but directly. The indirect approach is obviously lost on him if he's genuinely asking you why this is happening. Not that I think he will appreciate the feedback. In fact, it seems likely that someone with his personality would lash out and insult you. But even if he lashes out, it could still prompt him to think about what you said the next time he's in a social situation, and people start pulling away from him. You're not in the wrong, but I don't think it would work out well for you. He's not going to like the answer, and he's going to consider that the answer came from the whole family, because you are telling him why they're making the decisions they are. And then he will be mad at them, probably quite loudly. Plus, you don't have the right to speak for them. If you want to tell him why you don't invite him when you host, that is your right, but will probably still get you into trouble. Your best bet here is to say you can't speak for other people, and he needs to ask the family members who are making these decisions why he is excluded. And then I would give you in-laws a heads up. Really, someone ought to tell him. It would be a kindness. But you shouldn't speak for other people. You're not in the wrong. How old is the cousin? I would straight up ask him, do you want the truth or a polite line? If he says the truth, say you don't respect people's boundaries or their preferences and act like a teen at a frat. If he wants a polite line, say, your energy does not gel well with some people. Next up, I was at a bar with my friends, deep in conversation, when I suddenly felt two hands grab my shoulders from behind. A man who I didn't know leaned in and whispered something like, "Stay youthful, and you'll always feel free," or something equally random. I turned around and saw he was a complete stranger, likely in his 30s. For context, I'm in my 20s. My immediate reaction was to say, "Okay, but why are you grabbing me like that?" He responded, "I don't know. I just saw you looking at me earlier." I clarified. I turned around once because we were talking about something private, and I wanted to check if anyone was listening. He then said, "Oh, maybe I mistook you for someone else." By that point, I was extremely uncomfortable. His actions had completely shifted the mood for me. My friend sitting next to me noticed and asked if I was okay. Later, she mentioned, "Maybe you could have been more gentle in how you responded." But I explained to her that I felt violated. He had invaded my personal space and crossed a clear boundary. I believe it's important to trust my instincts and respond firmly in situations like this. If someone does something inappropriate, I feel it's better to address it in a way that makes them think twice about doing it to someone else. Honestly, if he had just introduced himself or said hello, my reaction would have been completely different. But grabbing me and whispering in my ear without consent? That's crossing a line. Even though I stood up for myself, I felt awkward and unsettled afterward. I couldn't shake the discomfort and just wanted to leave the bar. Now I'm questioning whether I was too harsh in how I handled it or if there's a better way to approach situations like this. Was I wrong for reacting the way I did? Let's start judging. A random person grabbing my shoulders and whispering in my ear would get a "Who the hell do you think you are?" from me. Guy's lucky he hasn't been slapped. You were much more level-headed than I would have been. Being touched like that is a violation of your personal space. Don't let anyone tell you that you should be polite to someone who would do that. Not too aggressive, always trust your gut. It ended up being harmless this time, but you never know someone's intentions. Keep being you. I worked at a bar throughout college, so I highly recommend your response. I've seen some weird, bad stuff happen. It's understandable to feel shaken after an encounter like that. You set a clear boundary, which is important, especially when someone invades your personal space in an unexpected and uncomfortable way. Your response was firm, but I think it's also great that you're reflecting on it. In situations like this, it's okay to be direct. Trusting your instincts and standing up for yourself is always valid. If anything, this is a reminder that setting boundaries is key, and if someone crosses them, they should understand the impact of their actions. You handled it well, and you shouldn't have to second-guess your comfort and safety. Next up, I, 27F, am once again responsible for all the Christmas planning and gifting this year. This has been a recurring issue in our household, as my fiancé, 26M, has not contributed much to these responsibilities since we got together 3 years ago. To give some context, my fiancé's family feels that we prioritize visits to my family over theirs. While we do visit my family more often, it's only because they communicate and plan events well in advance, allowing us to work them into our schedules. My fiancé's family, on the other hand, tends to assume we'll just show up without formally inviting us. We've explained multiple times that this doesn't work for us since our free time is limited. We've told them they need to explicitly invite us if they want to see us so we can plan accordingly, but it hasn't changed. Last year, I had enough of shouldering all the planning and told my fiancé that if he didn't contribute, I would make all the arrangements for us and assume he was okay with whatever I decided. He agreed to this arrangement. This year, neither my fiancé nor his family said anything about organizing Christmas plans. I could have ignored his family entirely based on our agreement, but I thought it wouldn't be fair. So I called and invited us to their Christmas Eve celebration, which they had assumed we would attend anyway. I made sure to include them for that important day. For the rest of the holiday, I planned visits with my family and relatives. Today, December 23rd, my fiancé suddenly informed me that we were invited to his extended family's gathering 2 hours away on December 25th. I told him no because we already had plans. He became upset, arguing that it wasn't fair that my family got 3 visits while his only got 1. I reminded him of our conversation last year, where he agreed that I would take charge of planning if he didn't make an effort. He said I should have confirmed my plans with him anyway. I stood firm, explaining that he had the opportunity to contribute to the planning, but chose not to. I told him he could go to the gathering alone if he wanted to. but that it would not sit well with me and would have consequences for our relationship. Additional context: this isn't about favoring one family over the other. It's about my fiancé not putting in the effort to communicate or organize anything. If he had reached out to his family or started a conversation earlier, I could have planned visits more evenly. Instead, he left everything to me and then got upset when I made plans based on the information I had. We are already spending Christmas Eve, the most important day, with his family. This was entirely my decision. The rest of the days are planned with my family, but it's not like every second is accounted for. That said, I'm not willing to drive 4 hours round trip to visit his extended family now that plans are already in place. For reference, my family doesn't send formal invitations. They call and say something like, "Hey, what are your plans? We're meeting here. Does that work for you?" His family doesn't reach out at all. It's more like his sister will call asking if we can give her a ride somewhere, and we'll be left wondering, to where? So, am I the jerk for not confirming my plans with my fiancé and standing firm when he brought up his family's last-minute gathering? Or is this on him for not making any effort to organize things earlier? Let's start judging. You're not in the wrong. My dad was this way. Not want to be involved in any planning of anything, but would get annoyed that things weren't planned that he wanted. Let him go to his parents. Don't bother going Xmas Eve. Maybe think about whether you're happy in the relationship. You're not in the wrong. Both he and his family have been given multiple chances to make efforts to see one another. Clearly, he's not as close to his family as he'd like to be. They were informed and decided to ignore the warning. Everyone sucks. It seems like you made plans and didn't inform him. You decided you're spending the days at your fam without telling him? I'm confused. You both lack communication skills. His family is different to yours. Yours plans and send invites, while his assumed you'll come because you're family. It's different family dynamics, so your boyfriend sucks the most, followed by you.